take a few minutes to talk about something that's very, very near and dear to my heart in addressing this issue of conflict. Conflict that arises from being Catholic. And that's the short title. The longer title of something like this would have to be the conflict of being Catholic in the Deep South Bible Belt. Now, I'm not throwing stones at the Deep South. I'm not throwing stones at the Bible Belt. But just bear with me a few minutes and listen to what I'm talking about. At our Bible study the other night, we were studying the part of Acts where Paul and Barnabas had gone out on their missionary trip, and they were converting a lot of pagans and Jews, for that matter. People were coming to Christ as a result of the preaching of Paul and Barnabas. And at one point the Jews got terribly upset, and they took Paul outside the city, and they thought that they had stoned him to death. And the Jews came there from Antioch and Iconium, and having persuaded the people, this is in Acts chapter 14, they stoned Paul and dragged him out of the city, supposing that he was dead. But when the disciples gathered about him, he rose up and entered the city, and on the next day he went on with Barnabas to Derbe. When they had preached the gospel to that city and had made many disciples, they returned to Lystra and to Iconium and to Antioch, strengthening the souls of the disciples, exhorting them to continue in the faith, and saying that through many tribulations we must enter the kingdom of God. Some translations will say persecutions, through many persecutions. Others say tribulations. Either way, through many conflicts. Through many conflicts we must enter the kingdom of God. The world hates us, people. The world hates any Christian that dares to live as a Christian. We can water down what the Bible teaches. We can water down what Jesus taught. We can water down what the apostles taught, and live in a way that the world around us isn't bothered by the way we live. But that's not what we're called to do. We're called to live radically Christian lives. And the reason the world hates us is because the world itself is diabolically, satanically opposed to the principles, to the precepts, to the very reality of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Now, we accept that. Jesus came to save the world. And I mean, right from the very beginning, Satan was on his case, and Satan is going to be on our case. And if they've done to him, referring to himself as the green tree, he said on one occasion, if they've done this to the green tree, just think about what they're going to do to the dry tree. And I see an allusion there to the early church and the end times church. I don't know if that's an accurate interpretation or not, but it's definitely an allusion in my mind to the early church and the end times church. Now, we expect persecution from the world. We expect tribulation coming from the world. We expect opposition coming from the world. That's a gift. If you're a Catholic believer, in the Deep South Bible Belt, you're going to incur opposition from fundamental evangelical Christians. Plain and simple. Expect it. It happens all the time. Why? Because there are branches of fundamental evangelical Christianity that do not believe that Catholic Christians are Christians, or that the Catholic Church is a Christian church. And we just recently encountered some of that again. It's one of the reasons why I was really not fond of the idea of moving back to the Deep South Bible Belt. And that's a long story, and I'll communicate some of that later. But when I was first becoming a, quote, closet Catholic, Shirley and I lived in northwestern New Jersey. And there's a Catholic church on every corner. Walk into the public library and go into the religious section, and the half or more than half of the books on the shelves were written by Catholic authors. So it was really easy in that environment to begin to embrace the Catholic faith. And I honestly did not. That was one of the reasons why I did not want to return to the Deep South Bible Belt, because I was part of that fundamental evangelical hostility toward the Catholic Church before the blinders fell off. And another area, though, that is much more intimately personal, and it's the conflict that comes right here within myself. My own conflict of being all that I can be, not a better version of David. There's more to it than that. It's about discovering Jesus. It's about incorporating the life of Christ into this human life that I'm physically living today. And one of the things that has helped me in this journey, in that process of discovery, in that process of going as deep as I can beneath the surface of the river of grace that flows from the throne of God, has been through discovering and implementing what Saint-Benedict taught to his monks in the 6th century. Saint-Benedict lived in the last part of the 5th century and up until about the middle, just past the middle of the 6th century. And through his work, he left behind a lot of monks, a lot of monasteries, and a little book called The Rule of Saint Benedict, where he lays out in very simple fashion, not just for the monk living in the monastery, but in very simple fashion how we, as Christians living in the world, should structure and order our lives, and the principles that we live by in order to be genuinely Christian in our relationship with Jesus, in our relationship with one another. And the difference is that outside of the monastery, we live out the principles of the Rule of Saint Benedict with our families and with our churches that we're part of. It's a struggle. It doesn't get any easier. Every day is a challenge, because I always have the option to pick up parts of the old man that I've been trying to lay down all along. The devil wants me to revert to my other nature, that nature that I inherited from Adam and Eve, that nature that kept me in so much trouble for so much of my life. The devil wants me to pick that nature up again. He wants me to shovel the dirt off of the top of it and let it crawl up out of the grave. But, you know, I never found a time in my life that was honestly rewarding, fruitful, peaceful, when I was living ruled by that old nature. And the rule of Saint-Benedict helps me keep that old nature in check. And you know, things like when I opened it up this morning here just for a minute and looked in, just looked at it. The first thing that popped up? Renounce yourself. Renounce yourself in order to follow Christ. That's hard to do. Renounce myself? I want to promote myself. My old nature wants to promote me. Discipline your body. Discipline my body? No. Do not pamper yourself, but love fasting. Discipline your body, do not pamper yourself, but love fasting. And on and on and on. Things like that, which all solidly biblical principles that help me to continue to grow deeper, go deeper beneath the surface of the river of life, the river of grace that flows from the throne of God through Jesus. So that's the conflict. And it's every day. It's an everyday conflict. And the world is in my face every day. And if the world is getting more and more in our face every day. If you've not noticed, pay attention to what's going on in the world. The persecutions that are taking place. The immorality that's beginning to become so accepted that even to talk about morality itself is seen as an evil. In this country. And we've got the world in our face. Here in the Deep South Bible Belt, from time to time, and that time to time is honestly too often, we as Catholic Christians have fundamental evangelicals in our face. And by the way, let me say this. If you are not a Catholic Christian, you have no right to put down or speak against the Catholic faith, because you don't understand. You don't know what we believe and what we teach in regard to the gospel of Jesus Christ and the necessity that all men have to be saved. So just stop it. And instead of attacking us, stand shoulder to shoulder with us, because the devil's coming after all of us. He's coming after Catholics, he's coming after Protestants, he's coming after Protestants of every denominational stripe and every non-denominational stripe. And if we don't stand together as one body, which we are, in Jesus' eyes, in God's eyes, the church is one. One holy, Catholic, and apostolic, the creed says. Saint Benedict, I'm going to let him have the last word about this. He says, Saint Benedict, in chapter 4, verse 20 of the Rule of Saint Benedict, great little book, get you one. I think you can buy one of these for about $3. Your way of acting should be different from the world's way. The love of Christ must come before all else. You're not to act in anger. You're not to nurse a grudge. Rid your heart of all deceit. And this is a tough one. As if those are not tough ones. Never give a hollow greeting of peace. Friends, it's not a hollow greeting of peace when I say to you, the peace of the Lord be with you.